So in the studio tonight, we're going to be comparing two of the most expensive and premium 15-inch gaming laptops. The Alienware X15R2 versus the new Razer Blade 15. We're going to be comparing the build quality, the internals, the performance, the gaming, and the battery life to see which of these two laptops is the ultimate premium 15-inch gaming laptop of 2022. Now, to make this test fair, we've tried to get these two laptops as close in spec as possible. So we've got the 12th gen Intel CPUs on both these machines, and they've both got the RTX 3070 Ti. Now we've had in both the 1080p and the QHD panels for both of these machines for both brands, so we will be talking about both of those options as well. Price-wise, the Razer Blade 15 comes in at $3,000, whereas the X15R2 comes in at the moment at Dell's website at $2,500, so a fair bit cheaper on the Alienware. Now, in my opinion, these are both fantastic looking machines, and the build quality is second to none. They're both built like tanks with no creak and no flex, which is to be expected considering the pricing of these laptops. And with regards to the aesthetics, both these companies took very different approaches, with the Razer Blade taking a more subtle approach with a laptop that would look at home in your office as it would do on your gaming desk, whereas the Alienware X15 has a lot more bling and it certainly looks a lot more gamer. And talking about bling, we have to mention the RGB in both of these machines. Now, both laptops have amazing per-key RGB backlit keyboards, but the Alienware X15 also has the beautiful mini LED Tron ring at the rear, a rear lit Alien Head logo, and a lit Alien Head power button, whereas the Razer Blade just has the green lit Razer logo on the rear of the machine. Size-wise, the Razer Blade 15 is a fair bit more compact than the Alienware X15R2 due to the Alienware having this large grille at the rear of the actual machine, which hopefully should help with thermals, which we're going to look at in a little while. And also, surprisingly, the Alienware is actually slimmer than the Blade, though it is so fine, as you can see here, that it's hardly worth talking about. But on paper, Alienware have the thinner machine. But with regards to the actual weight of the machines, the Blade 15 comes in very slightly lighter than the X15R2. But when I picked them both up, I could not tell the difference. It was that close. Now onto the ports, and this is an easy win for the Razer Blade 15 in my opinion. Not only does it have more USB-A ports and a full-size SD card slot on the Blade 15, whereas the X15 only has one USB-A port and a micro SD card slot, but also I much prefer the placement on the Blade 15. The X15R2 has all of the main ports on the rear of the laptop except for the power jack on one side and the headset jack on the other. Now that does make the laptop look a lot cleaner when it's on the desk with all the cables out of the back, but when you come to actually plugging your mouse or a dongle into this machine, it's a real pain having to scoot around the back to find where the actual port is. Whereas the Blade 15 has all of its port on either side of the machines, and it's so much easier to plug things in and out, although it doesn't look as clean on your desk. So as we open both these laptops, the Razer Blade has an easy open one-handed hinge, whereas the X15 is a bit stiffer and is more of a struggle to open with one hand. Once we've got the actual laptops open, both these hinges feel incredibly sturdy and lock in place, so there's no wobble when you're typing on these machines, as you would expect with both of these brands. And as we look to the palm rests, the Razer Blade 15, being that it's a milled aluminium chassis, has just an aluminium palm rest, whereas the Alienware goes with the soft touch coating on the actual palm rest. And I have to be honest, I do prefer this soft touch. It feels lovely when you've got your hands or you're picking up this laptop. But when we move to the trackpads, it's an easy win for the Razer Blade 15. The trackpad is much bigger than the Alienware, and it's got to be one of my favourite trackpads on a Windows machine. Now, there's nothing wrong with the X15 trackpad. It's a great trackpad. It's just a little bit too small for my liking. Now, moving up to the keyboards, and there's positive to both of these brands' keyboards. The Alienware has by far the best typing experience of these two machines, and in fact, I'd go as far as to say that Alienware have the best typing keyboards of any gaming laptop out there. But the Razer Blade does have a slightly improved keyboard this year, and it does have a better layout than the Alienware. And also, if you've bought the USA version, your secondary functions are backlit on the Razer Blade 15, whereas none of the Alienwares have the secondary functions backlit. And that's a real shame. Alienware did used to offer that. With regards to the speakers, the Alienware has the Dolby tuned speakers, whereas the Razer Blade 15 has the THX tuned speakers, and they sound like this. Speaker test at 80% volume. We'll start with the Razer Blade 15. Alienware. Both pretty good speakers for 15-inch, but I have to be honest, the Alienware sounds very slightly fuller. The Blade 15 is a bit tinier than the actual Alienware, so I've got to give the win there to the Alienware. Moving up to the screens, and both these brands have a 360Hz 1080p panel. They're both just over 300 nits of brightness and they both look amazing, so if you're choosing the 1080p, either of these is good. But if you're taking the 240Hz QHD panel, the X15R2 is actually the better option because it gets brighter at about 400 nits, whereas the Blade 15 only has a 300 nit panel, and you can definitely notice the difference when they're side by side with how much brighter that Alienware is. And above the screens we have the webcams, and they look and sound like this. This is a test of the webcam and the microphones on the Alienware X15R2. And this is a test of the webcam and the microphones on the 2022 Razer Blade 15 Advanced. And also, both of these machines have Windows Hello facial recognition. They're both accurate and they're both fast to log you in, and I absolutely love it on both of these machines. Getting to the internals on both these laptops is very easy, but once you get inside, it's an easy win for the Razer Blade 15. On the Blade, you can upgrade the 2 DDR5 RAM slots, you've got 2 Gen 4 M.2 slots, and a socketed Wi-Fi card, making it a great little machine for upgradability. The Alienware X15R2, on the other hand, the RAM is soldered, so you do need to make sure you buy the RAM you need when you buy the laptop. But you do also get the 2 Gen 4 M.2 slots and a socketed Wi-Fi card on the X15R2. And also, the motherboard on the Alienware X15R2 is inverted, meaning that if you need to do any maintenance or if you want to replace the laptop, you need to disassemble the entire machine to take the motherboard out to actually take the heatsink off. Alternative, the Blade 15 has the motherboard the usual way, where you can get to the fans and the vapor chamber just by removing the base plate, making this machine very easy to maintain and replace if you wish. And whilst we're talking about the actual cooling solutions, the Razer Blade 15 has the vapor chamber and a normal twin fan system to exhaust the hot air through the hinge. They've been using this design for years, it does work pretty well, but it is obviously a thermal constraint of this laptop is that all the air does need to come through that hinge system. Whereas the X15R2 has a 4-fan system, a vapor chamber, and Element 31 thermal paste, provided with much better exhaust ventilation around the back and the sides of the laptop, making it much easier to exhaust the hot air from this machine, which should in theory give the actual X15R2 much better thermal capacity. We're going to go test that now. So on to the performance then. And both these machines have the 12th gen CPUs, and the Razer actually has the upgraded 12800H, although it is completely pointless in this chassis. When we run the Geekbench 5 and the Cinebench R23, the Razer Blade 15 is handily beaten by the X15R2. Now the X15R2, with its much better thermal system and ventilation, is able to maintain over 100 watts on this 12th gen CPU, and these 12th gen CPUs really like wattage. Whereas the Razer Blade 15, on its maximum boost mode, can only maintain 58 watts on that CPU. Now it does mean that the actual Razer Blade 15 remains pretty quiet and the temperatures remain pretty good, but performance isn't great compared to the X15R2. Whereas the X15R2, Dell really do not care about the temps. They let this thing run at 100C before it starts throttling back, which is why it maintains well over 100 watts on that CPU. And with regards to the GPU, they've both got the 3070 Ti's, but the Razer Blade 15 has 110 watts maximum on that actual 3070 Ti, whereas the X15R2 has 140 watts on that 3070 Ti. Although in most gaming and in practice, if there's a heavy CPU and GPU load, I find the X15R2 does seem to sit at about 115 to 120 watts, and only when it's on light CPU use does it actually hit its 140 watts. Whereas the Razer Blade consistently hits about 105 to 110 watts, meaning that the GPU performance isn't that much difference between the two, but the extra CPU performance does allow this X15R2 to pull ahead. So we've talked about the performance in benchmarks and we've talked about the temperatures internally, and I have to be honest, they both game amazingly well. But if you're planning on dedicated gaming on this laptop, I would recommend the X15R2 over the Razer Blade 15. The chassis remains cooler, the ventilation is so much better, it maintains higher, obviously, performance throughout that gaming, and it's a more comfortable gaming experience. The Blade 15, it does game very well, but the palm rest and the WASD keys do heat up, especially when you're pushing this machine to the max. And it does get a little bit uncomfortable after time. Now, if you're using an external keyboard and you've got this docked, that may not bother you. But if you're using the actual laptop itself to game on, the X15R2 was a much more comfortable experience. With regards to fan noise, the Razer Blade 15 does seem a little bit quieter than the X15R2, though when I was gaming with them one after the other, neither were bothersome because the fans don't pulsate, they just run at a flat out speed. The X15R2 has just the balanced or the performance mode, and the performance mode does seem to max out about 52 decibels, whereas the Razer Blade 15 max out about 50 decibels, so it is slightly quieter than the X15R2. So what about mobile use between these two devices? They both got pretty large batteries, but as we know from all our testing of these 12th gen machines, battery life is never great. The Razer Blade 15 is quite a bit better on battery life than the X15R2. With the QHD screens on both of these models tested, the Razer Blade 15 came in about 5 hours, whereas the X15R2 came in just under 3 hours. There's quite a lot of difference. Now that's without any tweaking, that's just the usual better battery settings, and lighting is on. If you tweak the machines to have lighting off and the machine's running at 60 Hz, you will get better battery life out of both of these units. And also the 1080p models on both of these score even better by about an extra half an hour to an hour than the QHD models. Performance on battery is absolutely fantastic, as with all these 12th generation gaming laptops we've tested. The CPUs are incredibly snappy on battery, but obviously the GPUs be using such a high wattage, those are massively throttled back if you do plan on gaming on battery. So obviously being a gaming laptop, you're going to need to carry the PSU with you. The Razer Blade, we have a 240 watt Razer Blade power brick here with the usual proprietary connector. Now this is a bit of an annoying connector. Once it's seated in, it's incredibly solid in the laptop, but it's a bit of a pain. It's really tight to push in and it can only go two ways. And if you put it in front of the laptop, it blocks your other ports. The X15R2 on the other hand has a more compact 240 watt charger with the usual barrel connector. Not only are these easier to pick up if you want a replacement power adapter because Dell is so popular, it's actually smaller and lighter and easier to use than the Razer Blade. So with regards to the power adapter, the Alienware is better. And also both of these laptops are capable of power delivery. So if you forget your power adapter or if you're just off doing office work, you could use a USB-C adapter with both of these machines to get you by. But bear in mind, if you're using a USB-C adapter on either of these machines, the performance is severely throttled. So it's pretty much only good for light use or office work. So that leads me through to the conclusion. And I have to be honest, I do love both of these machines, but in very different ways. If you're looking for a laptop that you just want to game on, or gaming is your priority, I'd say you've got to choose the X15R2. It's a much better gaming machine. Now, yes, it has its flaws. It has soldered on RAM. It is a lot more bulky than the Razer Blade 15, but it is a great device with a fantastic keyboard, brighter screen if you get the QHD, and just great gaming performance. The Razer Blade 15, on the other hand, is a better all-round machine with much more compact and slightly lighter design, better battery life, and a better port layout and selection than the X15R2. So I'd say if you want to buy this laptop for work and play, then you might want to consider this Razer Blade. But another thing to consider is the Razer Blade is a lot more expensive than the X15R2. And the last thing in the conclusion I want to mention is the warranty. Razer customer service is very hit or miss, and the warranty is only 1 year, and you do have to send things back to Razer. It's not the best, and that's one of the things that does very often go against Razer. Whereas the Alienware, being owned by Dell, you get on-site warranty, so if you have a problem with the laptop, an engineer will come to your site and fix it. Dell customer support are sometimes difficult to get hold of, but when you get hold of one of the Alienware engineers, I find they're absolutely brilliant, and Dell offer many different plans of different years length for the warranties. So with regards to the warranties, it's an easy win for the Alienware. Well, that's my thoughts on both these machines. I think I would personally probably take the Alienware X15R2 just because I would probably game more than I would do anything else on it. But I'd love to know what your opinion is. Which would you buy of these two machines? Or would you suggest a better 15-inch than either of these that I've tested here? Please let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, thanks for watching.